Say hello to Horn Controller Mark II. I've switched things up a bit, moving all of the timing and control over to the software side with an Arduino-compatible Pro Trinket from Adafruit. This has reduced the total number of components to 15, compared with the approximately 50 components of the old unit. This shares many components with the old controller, including the same 9-volt regulator and filter caps, the same relays, though they could be replaced with opto-isolators with minimal modifications, and the same green, yellow, and red LEDs for troubleshooting indicators. It needs 4 connections to function: positive 12 volts on the red, ground on the black, signal in on the purple, and the yellow for signal out to the secondary horn relay. Connect it to power. Green light comes on, red light flashes a few times, and the unit's now booted up. If I connect the purple wire to ground to signify that the horn button is pressed, the green light will illuminate, like that. If I hold it a bit longer, the yellow and the red turn on, showing that the horn is enabled and sounding, respectively. If I let go, the yellow remains on for another 1.5 seconds. This is the hold enabled functionality, which allows the loud horns to be sounded again immediately, bypassing the delay if they've already been enabled. Notice the green and the red come on at the same time. This will last for a specified delay after the horn button is last released, whereupon the system goes back to normal. I realized I needed a see-through enclosure for the circuit board, even if it's only a temporary one. Couldn't find anything on my various shelves, but the recycle bin yielded this. It's a tiny bit big, but I'd say it'll work just fine. A snap-on lid, can tape that off if I wanted to. Hole on this end for all the wires, and I cut a little slot here so I can program it without taking it out. 2 bolts, one there, and it's secure, along with some little felt pads to keep it from rattling. In the engine bay, up on the driver's side, that's the left side in this country, by the battery, this box here was where the old horn control circuit board lived. The heat and vibration of the engine might have contributed to its early demise, so to prevent that happening again, the new control board is going to live in the cabin. A lot of the hard work was done when I did the first install. This red wire and this black with white heat shrink wire are in parallel with the stock horn circuit. Red is switched power with the ignition switch, and the black with white heat shrink is dragged to ground to sound the horns. If I run these back to the cabin, then there is power and signal for the horn control board, and I'll just need to run one more wire back into the engine compartment because the main fuse and power relay for the secondary horn still lives in this box. To get wires or hoses or other small cable-like things from the engine bay to the cabin or vice versa, need to find some sort of pass-through. It will be wedged under the motor of the ABS control unit, so you have to pull it out this way to get it free, and it goes through right down there through the firewall. Now comes the tricky part, and tall people, I feel sorry for you. Holy rainbow wire harness, Batman! Down in the footwell here, the top of the screen should be towards the firewall, bottom of the screen should be towards the driver's seat, and as you look up towards the firewall, we have right there where the camera is pointing. Pass-through has these nice little rubber caps. You can pull those off and put them aside for now. In our case, we're going to be running 3 wires. We'll use the same color scheme as I have on the board, red for power, yellow for outgoing signal, and purple for incoming signal. I've cut off one of the closed nipples from the cap, fed the wires through the resulting hole. It was much easier than I expected to get the wires through the pass-through. Now that they're here, I've given myself plenty of slack, and I'm going to start hooking up the board and figuring out where to mount it. Found a good place to mount the board and its enclosure, There'd be a clutch pedal here if this were a manual transmission vehicle. Instead, I put a bolt through. Also serves as a ground for the circuit. Everything else wedges in here nicely. It's not going to rattle or fall off. And the rest of the wires from the pass-through have connectors and are all taped up so they don't short against anything. For pretty obvious safety reasons, I've disconnected the box from the battery before I go any further. Inside, now there is just a 40 amp fuse and a 40 amp relay. We're going to be using this red wire to tap off power for the horn control board, and the black wire is going to be a failsafe such that the horns have to be honking, as in the black wire pulled to ground, in order to provide a ground for this relay to turn on. That way, even if a very strange failure happens on the control board, the loud horns cannot honk on their own. I'm transitioning to 22 gauge wire to run power and signal to the horn control board. Because of this, I'm adding an inline fuse for 2 amps, because otherwise all of this thin wire would only have the main horn circuit fuse for protection. That's a 10 or 15 amp fuse, and would happily barbecue this wire and start a very inconvenient electrical fire if ever a short were to develop. Got the wires roughly run through the engine compartment and cut to length. I've hooked up the power wire to the other side of the fuse I put in earlier, and I've wedged the purple incoming signal wire to the terminal of the relay that goes to that side of the stock horn circuit. Because it's late at night, I've unplugged both the stock horns, and I've left the yellow signal wire disconnected. The car won't make any noise, but I can turn on the ignition and press the horn button to test operation of my controller board. There's the board. If I turn the key to the first position, it should boot up. And there we go, it's running. And if I reach up and press the horn button, we should see it work as intended. Yep, green light, short beep, beep, beep. Hold it down. And the loud horns are enabled and turned on. And there's the hold enabled working. That looks to be a success to me. Got all the control wiring hooked up. I'm leaving the power for the loud horns disconnected, just so we don't make any noise this late at night. Got my meter hooked up in continuity mode, so it'll make a noise when the relay closes. Go in, press the horn button briefly. Nothing happens. Delay timer does its job. Hold it down. There we go. Hold enabled working. I let go, wait a couple seconds, press it again, back to normal. Next day, got some good wire sheath and secured it with cable ties, wires to the stock horn circuit, power from the battery, wires to the control box, and just down out of sight are the wires to the horn itself. Finally got around to labeling the box as well. I meant to do that when I first installed it, but then never got around to it until now. About 75 feet away, going to give the horn a quick test.